Evolution can feel like a huge, complicated idea, something reserved for textbook scientists or long debates. But the truth is much simpler. Evolution is everywhere. It's in the shape of a leaf, the stripes of a fish, the speed of a cheetah, and the color of your eyes. It's happening right now silently and constantly in every living thing. Today we're going to strip away the jargon and explain evolution using nothing more than simple examples and everyday logic. No equations, no technical vocabulary. Just the clear, intuitive story of how tiny changes given enough time create the entire living world around us. Evolution is one of the most important ideas in all of science, but it's also one of the most misunderstood. Many people imagine evolution as something mysterious, complicated, mathematical, or even philosophical. But evolution is surprisingly simple. It's not a belief, not a guess, not a story someone invented. It's a natural process that happens whether we pay attention or not. In fact, you can see evolution happening around you every day in simple, intuitive ways. Today, we're going to explain evolution with no jargon, no intimidating terms, and no complicated diagrams. Just clear ideas, real examples, and a story that makes the entire concept feel obvious. Let's begin with a single powerful statement. Evolution is change over generations. That's it. Every generation living things change just a little bit. And when you add up those small changes over a long time, you get the entire diversity of life on Earth. But how do those small changes add up? Where do they come from? And what drives evolution forward? To understand that, we have to start with something very simple: variation. No two living things are exactly alike. Even identical twins have differences. Every dog, every leaf, every fish, every bacterium has tiny variations in shape, size, color, behavior, everything. Some differences are big, some are small, but variation is everywhere. Why? Because every time a living thing reproduces, the DNA that it passes on isn't copied perfectly. It's copied well, incredibly well, but not perfectly. Tiny mistakes sneak in. Most mistakes don't do anything meaningful, but every once in a while, one of them changes something. Maybe a little bit, maybe a lot. Maybe for better, maybe for worse. But the important thing is, variation exists. Now, here comes the second idea: inheritance. Some variations are passed down from parents to offspring. If a plant grows slightly taller than its neighbors, its seeds might also grow into slightly taller plants. If a bird is born with a slightly stronger beak, its children might inherit that stronger beak. Variations don't appear randomly in the next generation, they come from the previous one. And that takes us to the third idea: selection. Imagine a group of animals living in a forest. The ones with traits that help them survive, maybe they run a bit faster, hide a bit better, digest food a bit more efficiently, will survive slightly longer, have more offspring, and pass those traits on. The ones with less useful traits might struggle more and reproduce less. Nothing magical happens. Nothing decides which trait is best. There's no perfection involved. It's simply that some traits make survival a tiny bit easier, and those traits become more common. Put these three things together: variation, inheritance, and selection, and you get evolution, a slow, steady shift in the traits of a population over generations. Let's make this more concrete with an easy example. Imagine a group of birds living on two islands. On one island, the winds are extremely strong. Birds with long wings get blown off easily, so birds with shorter wings survive the storms better. Over time, the population slowly shifts toward shorter wings. On the second island, the winds are gentle and food is far away. Birds with longer wings can glide farther and find more food. So, over generations, long-winged birds become more common. Same original population. Two different environments. Two different outcomes. No one forced anything. No one designed anything. Nature simply filtered which traits worked better. This is the heart of natural selection: traits that help survival become more common. Traits that don't fade away. And this doesn't only happen in wild environments. Humans do it all the time through something called artificial selection, which is just natural selection, guided by people instead of nature. Every dog breed on Earth, from tiny chihuahuas to giant Great Danes, came from wolves. Not because wolves decided to become chihuahuas, but because humans selected traits over thousands of generations. Woolly sheep, colorful flowers, giant, juicy apples, sweet corn. They all come from simple, natural beginnings shaped by selective breeding. Artificial selection shows us something important. Evolution isn't theoretical. It's visible, it's practical, it's testable. But what about the deeper questions? How do complex forms appear? How does one species become two? To answer that, we need to talk about mutation, the source of all new traits. Mutation simply means small changes in DNA. These changes happen when DNA is copied. Most mutations do nothing at all. Some are harmful, some are helpful. And a very small number open the door to new abilities, new appearances, or new behaviors. You can think of mutations as new options that appear in a population. Some options help, some don't. But without mutation, evolution would stop. There would be no new traits to work with. Now let's imagine evolution over a long time, thousands, millions, or even tens of millions of years. Small changes add up. Populations split. Groups become isolated. Maybe a river separates a population. Maybe an island forms. Maybe a forest becomes a desert. As different environments select for different traits, the groups slowly drift apart genetically. After enough time, they become so different, they no longer interbreed. And at that moment, a new species has formed. Speciation isn't sudden. It isn't dramatic. It's slow, gradual, ordinary. Just the accumulation of differences over many generations. This process explains why we see patterns in nature. Fish in different lakes evolve different colors, birds on different islands evolve different wings, plants in different climates evolve different shapes. Every population is shaped by its environment, slowly, steadily. But how do we know evolution is true? One piece of evidence is fossils, the preserved remains of ancient life. Fossils show us creatures that lived long ago, many of which are transitional. Not fully one type, not fully another, but somewhere in between. Fish with the beginnings of limbs. Reptiles with feathers. Early humans with features partly like us and partly like our ancestors. Fossils form a timeline of change. Another piece of evidence is DNA itself. All living things share DNA. The more closely related two species are, the more similar their DNA sequences appear. Humans share about half their DNA with bananas, around 85% with mice, and over 98% with chimpanzees. DNA is like a record of millions of years of shared ancestry. But evolution doesn't only happen over long timescales. It also happens fast. Bacteria evolve resistance to antibiotics in a matter of years. Insects evolve resistance to pesticides. Animals adapt to pollution fishing pressure, changing climates, new predators, new environments. Evolution isn't only ancient history, it's happening constantly. One of the clearest examples is antibiotic resistance. When bacteria encounter antibiotics, most die. But the few with mutations that protect them survive and multiply. Suddenly, a population that was weak becomes strong, not because individuals changed, but because surviving traits became more common. Evolution doesn't aim for perfection. It just responds to the environment. And that leads us to an important truth. Evolution has no direction, no goal, no destination. It doesn't work toward better or stronger. It works toward whatever works right now. The best traits are only the best in the current conditions. Change the conditions, and the best traits will change too. Humans are not the end of evolution. We're simply one result among millions of evolutionary paths shaped by our environment, our history, our ancestors, and countless generations of tiny changes. Now let's tie everything together with the simplest explanation of evolution you'll ever hear. Imagine a jar full of beads. Each bead represents a different trait in a population. Some beads are red, some blue, some green. When individuals reproduce, they pass beads to their offspring. If the environment rewards red beads, you'll see more red beads in the next generation. If blue beads help survival, blue beads increase. If the environment changes, the successful bead changes too. Over many generations, the jar fills with different colors depending on what works. That's evolution. Small differences added up over time, filtered by survival passed on to new generations. Now imagine that process happening in millions of jars, over millions of years all around the world. And you get the diversity of life on Earth. Evolution is not random. Mutation provides the options, but natural selection chooses what stays. Evolution is not a story about perfection. It's a story about adaptation. And evolution is not something that used to happen. It's happening right now constantly. Every organism alive today, humans, birds, trees, bacteria, is part of a chain of ancestors that stretches back billions of years to the very first living cells. Life didn't appear fully formed. It grew. It changed. It branched. It adapted. Evolution explains how simple chemical reactions eventually led to you listening to this video. It explains why species look the way they do, why environments shape life, why life changes when conditions change, why nothing stays the same forever. Evolution is the long, slow story of life discovering what works. And once you understand that the world begins to look different, every leaf, every feather, every bone, every feature on every living thing carries the history of millions of years. You're not separate from this story. You're part of it. A single chapter in a long, beautiful, tangled story of change. That's evolution explained simply. Evolution isn't a theory you choose to believe in. It's the ongoing story written into the DNA of every creature that has ever lived. It's the reason life adapts, the reason species change, and the reason the world is filled with such incredible diversity. Once you understand how small variations accumulate over generations, the whole idea becomes beautifully obvious. Evolution isn't complicated, it's patient, it's persistent, and it's still shaping life at this very moment. If you enjoyed this explanation and want more simple, story-driven breakdowns of how the world works, feel free to subscribe and join us for the next exploration. Until then, stay curious, because life's story is still being written.